Well, good morning. Now, I want to talk to you. Let me just bring this down a bit so I know I'm in the right spot for the camera. Am I in the right spot for the camera? Yeah. Right, good morning. Now, I want to teach you to do something a little bit different or give you an idea of how to do foundation paper piecing. Now, I love it because at the end of the day, it can give you some fabulous results. So I thought with Valentine's coming up, we'll do a heart, and we can use this heart then in a project that I'm also going to make. Now, there's a couple of things you're going to want to be able to do that. One is obviously you need to be able to put the template up, and you'll need to be able to print the template out on paper. Now, I printed this one out on just ordinary copy of paper, but then I printed this one out on foundation paper, or as we used to call it in the old days, rough paper. It's just a little bit thinner than this, but this works equally as well. Just when we're sewing, you want to make sure your needle, your stitch length is very short, 1.5, something like that, because the smaller your sewing stitches, the nicer the perforations, because at some stage we're going to be tearing this off. Okay, so that's ordinary copy of paper. This one is actually Carol Doakes. I've had it years, you can see. Carol Doakes foundation paper, American sizes, but it doesn't make much difference in our printers, does it? So, I wouldn't bother going to all that length until you've decided whether or not you're happy with it. When we do some more complicated things, then there's another one here called Simple Foundations Translucent Vellum Paper, because it's easier to see through the paper to see the material underneath. But that's when we do, if we get on to do complicated ones. But this is an introductory, very easy one to get started with. Now, other things that you may want, I've got here, this is Sainsbury's Home Glue Stick. It's just an ordinary, screw up white UHU type, or whatever they call it. Anyway, it washes out, but we only want a little bit of that just to get us going in the beginning. And then the other thing, can you see this? I got two. I got a big one for if I do biggy things, but this one is fine. I use an add a quarter. Now, I'll show you how this works, but this is called add a quarter ruler. But if you don't have an add a quarter to start with, don't rush out and buy things just for the sake of doing one project, because you may not like it. And you can use a piece of card, like this is a piece of card, and I'll show you how to use a piece of card to do more or less the same thing. But if you are using a piece of card, well then yeah, you're going to want a little 6-inch ruler. I'll find one around here somewhere. Yeah. Always hiding. You'll want a 6-inch ruler or something, a small ruler anyway, so that you can judge a 1/4 inch. Now, you will see that on these templates that I've given you, there is a dotted line with a 1/4 inch around the outside. Now that's very important that you keep that all together as it is, and we're going to come outside of that, but that's going to help us square it up into the block ready to put together with another block in the future. So before I start, just to make life easier for me, I'm just going to, because I prefer to work with small things, I'm just going to very carefully, leaving that line alone, I'm just going to make the block smaller, or make the paper smaller. So there we are. Yeah, I could take some off of here. Yeah, take some off of there. So that's my block I'm ready to work with. Still got my nice perforated dotted lines around the outside. So looking at our square, our template, as you'll see there are little numbers written on it. A1, A2, A3, A4, and as you've guessed, this is the order we're going to sew them in. Now, we're going to sew on the black line, okay? This will be the back of the project. The really nice posh side of the project will come out on this side. Let me show you how. To cover the A1, as you can see, it's a triangle. I want a piece of material. I'm going to do all my outside pieces in white so that the heart stands out, okay? So I need a triangular shape that's going to more than cover that. Yeah, remembering that you've got to cover past your dotted line too, with at least 1/4 of an inch either side. So roughly speaking, and this is what I like about it, roughly speaking, if I cut a piece of triangle like that, I know that that's going to fit. Yeah? Now, remembering with white on white, which is the back and which is the front. For the very first piece, this is where our glue comes in. Okay, so I've taken my glue and just in the middle, just to start off with, to hold it for me, I'm just putting a dab of glue, and that's the only time we're going to use glue, I think. And then I've got to make sure I'm putting this down, so I've got, it's difficult in this side. So I've got the nice side of the fabric, remembering I've got to come over my dotted line. Bearing in mind I need 1/4 of an inch that side. And yeah, that'll do. So I'm going to stick that down, hopefully, as best I can for a moment. You can put a pin in it, but I tend to use glue for the first bit. So that's going to cover that bit. Now, the next thing it's going to join to is the A2. So while that's there, could give it a quick iron and then it would definitely stick. But anyway, we're going to fold the paper, and you see, I use this in some ways, but then in other ways I do like the card. If you've got a postcard or a piece of card, just as good. We're going to, I just want, leave the material where it is. I just want to fold that line. You see, I've just folded that line. Yeah. And then, turning it over, I can see where my fold is. Alright, there. My A2 is this piece. So whatever I decide I'm going to use for there, and I think I'll use a piece of this lovely blue. I want it to be at least 1/4 of an inch bigger all the way around. And this is what I say, when you first start to do this, be generous with your pieces, because you know it's all too easy to make them too small. As you get into this, you will start to realise I don't need it that big. Alright, so I'm ready to go with this piece. I folded back my piece of paper on that line between the A1 and the A2, and I haven't quite got that right, so I'm going to do it again. Just a minute. Yep, folded that back between the A1 and the A2, and this is where the add 1/4 comes on, because there's a ridge on it. I wonder if this is if you can see this nicely on. Let it focus. There's a ridge. See, there's a bit sticking out, a ridge. And you can put that ridge then to just lock up against your paper, and that gives you 1/4 of an inch. Do you see how I did that? Now, this bit, once you've got our 1/4 of an inch, then right sides together with this, right sides together. I'm just taking into account if I go, whoops, if I go right sides together with this, is it big enough to fold back over and fit on that square that I wanted? Yes, it is. So this time I'm going to pop a pin in. So I've got it meeting up on that 1/4 inch that we just made, and this time, whoops, I'm just going to pop a pin in. Actually, I could put my pin out the way, down there, out the way. So that's pinned. Now from the front side, I can sew this line that I just folded between the A1 and the A2. I am going to go right out to the edge of that dotted line, and I am going to come a few stitches over this line. So I'm sewing that line out to the edge of the dotted line and a few stitches over this line, and I'm using 180, 150 on my sewing machine stitch length, just ordinary white cotton, so that I get a nice perforation. Okay, so I've just sewn from there to outside my dotted lines all the way down and a few stitches past. Now you don't need to lock on and lock off with stitches, that's because they're going to be engulfed by something else. Turn it over. Oh yeah, so going this way, and peel, and you could then press it, but peel your seam back. Okay, now turn it back to the front, and the next piece we're going to do, get your bit of card, put it on the black line, and we're going to fold between the A2 and the A3. Then we're going to take the adder quarter, or if you don't have one, as I didn't have one to start off with, you would put your 1/4 inch line on that fold of paper and cut off your excess. Okay, so you've got 1/4 inch. So either which way you do it, whether you do it like that or you use 1/4 inch on your ruler, you need to have a 1/4 inch hanging over. Then we've got to decide what colour am I going to do there. Oh, I know, I want to do a piece of this. And what size is it going to be? Yep, I want it to be a 1/4 inch bigger than that, but I've got to come out to here, so I'm going to cut, and I want it that way up actually. So I'm just looking at my pattern on my piece of paper, on my print. So I'm going to cut myself quite a big square, so I've got plenty of room. Cut myself a square of material, and with my paper folded back so I can see where my 1/4 inch is. No, sorry, I don't want my paper folded back. I want to be able to see where I'm going. So, and I said I wanted, if that's the top, I want the birds to open up that way. So, and make sure I got 1/4 inch this way over the line, and it goes outwards. That's fine. So that's good for me. Put my pin in. Come back a bit. Put my pin in. Yeah. And then from the front, take it to the machine, and from the front, I am going to sew a couple of stitches past there, down this line between the A2 and the A3, and a couple of stitches past there. I'm just going to go and do that. Okay, so I've just sewed from there to there, cut the stitch, well, 1 or 2 stitches. Now I can unpin that piece, peel it back. Really speaking, I ought to go in the iron these in between. Okay, and now, well, we're going to forget that edge for a moment. The next thing we want to do is the line A1, A2, A3 we've done, so we need to do A4. I haven't decided again, I haven't decided what colours I'm doing this, but never mind. Oh, I know what I'll do. I think I'll do some of that grey. So I'm putting my cardboard on that line between the two, folding my paper back, and make sure I've got it correct. Yeah. Nudging up my adder, or take a quarter, add a quarter, whatever you like to call it. And I'm cutting anything past 1/4 of an inch away. Okay, now, yeah, I'm going to do this, I think. Is it long enough? I have to do it that way. Make sure it's wide enough. It's got to be 1/4 of an inch over this way and 1/4 of an inch over that way. So, cut myself a nice wide piece. Turn it over so I know where it's going to go. You can see it. There it is. That's where it's going to go. Make sure it's definitely going to cover it. Long enough. Yep. And then I'm going to add it. And I'm going to move it up this way a bit. So I've got, you see, I've got this selvage here. So I'm just going to move this up. As long as I've got 1/4 of an inch over here, it's going to work. So now, where's my pin gone? I'm going to pin that in there, and I'm going to find another pin and just pin that in. Oops, up there. Right sides together, always right sides together on the back. Then, yeah, you guessed it, we're going to go to the machine and we're going to sew a couple of stitches past there, and we're going to sew the A4 line all the way down, and we're going to carry on until we get past that dotted line, because remember that's our seam allowance. Okay, so I've just sewn from there to here in that line between A3 and A4 all the way down. Take my pins out, fold that back, and obviously I really should be ironing these, but there we are. Right, so what's the next thing we've got to do? Well, we've got to do between A4 and A5, and this time I want it again in my special material that I really like. That's not wide enough. That's wide enough. Right, okay. So I'm going to cut myself a strip that I know is long enough and wide enough. Double check it will fit. Yay, it's going to fit. Right, so turn it over. As I say, don't worry about cutting all these bits yet. We only cut where we need to. So, taking the card, as we're working between A4 and A5 now. Oh, I'm not. Why is mine saying that? Mine says do that first. Perhaps we should. Let's do it in the way I originally asked for it to be done. So our A5 piece is this piece in the corner. So we can fold that back on our card, put our 1/4 inch on, cut off everything we don't need. Okay, now we know again this is only a little triangle, so take a take a view. That's probably big enough. That could be big enough to fit on there. Yay! Right sides together, across there. Pin that in place because we know where it's going to go, don't we? Over to the front. I could have taken that off. Doesn't matter, but. And we're going to sew the A5 line. Right, but from the dotted line to the dotted line. Or just over. Yeah. Okay, so just sew that from there to there. And pin it. Fold it back. Yeah. And that'll do for now. We don't need to do any trimmings for now because that'll all get trimmed in the end. Okay, but you can see how this is coming together now, can't you? So what was the other thing it told me to do? It's an A5. Oh, then A6. Okay, so now we're back to where we were going to do it just now, which is A6. So we fold back our A6 line nicely, and then this is what was left over of our A4 material, so we can trim that up to being just 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, just 1/4 of an inch now. Get our piece. I already cut some, didn't I? Yeah. Make sure our pieces, mine's far too long, I'm going to cut them off. Make sure it's not even straight, let's do it this way. Make sure we're, right sides together. Matching that 1/4 of an inch seam. Where is it? There. And yeah, you guessed it, turn it over, and just outside that top of that line, and just outside the top of that line, we're going to sew that A6 line now. Very easy, very quick, and moreover, they're practically perfect. Okay, so fold that back, go and iron it. I know ironing mine, but go and iron it. Then, what's the next thing it tells us to do? A6, it says do this one, A7. So come round here, get the card, and here you might notice, as I lift this up, it may be, because my stitching went over, it may be slightly pinned down by the stitching. That's okay, just pull it so the stitching rips through, yeah? Put your outer quarter on. So now you've got your 1/4 inch line. Yep. Back on this side. And then we want another triangle. All triangles with this light, isn't it? Running out of triangles. Let's have plenty of them. Right. And that is going to fit across. This is why you should iron it down. Making sure you've got it the right way, so nice sides together. and making sure that when you open it up it's going to fit. Yay. That's going to fit across there. Pin that in, and yep, we're going to go and sew that A7 line. Right, take the pin out, fold that back nicely. Okay, and we don't need, because it's an outside one, we don't need to do any more with that for a moment. Yeah, and obviously I did sew from the dotted lines, because remember we've got this is our seam allowance, right? So what's the next thing we've got to do looking at it? We've done the top up, so done that one. Right, we've got two bits left. We've got A8 and A9, so A8. Again, I'm going back to white for this because I want it to, I think I've done my heart, yeah. So I'm going back to white for the outside pieces. And I want one that's going to see, that's lovely, and I know that's going to fit. So I need to cut that. I need to cut that bigger than that, so plenty of room. Give yourself plenty of room. But before we go to fix it on the back, obviously, put our card on the A8 line. Fold, and see what I mean about the, if you know, the stitching will want to come with you, but you just rip it out the paper. Make your fold. Sometimes I like to double check my folds. Make your fold. Add on a 1/4 of an inch, or use your 1/4 of an inch off your 6-inch ruler. Yeah, I'm getting rid of any bits that are there. So now, you see, we've got a nice tidy line there. And now, we know that this triangle is going to end up like that. So it's got to fit on from past the dotted line on both sides. Put nice sides together, pretty sides together. And yeah, you guessed it, we're going to go and sew A8. Alright, so I've sewed past from there to there. Well, let me show you on this side. From past the dotted line to past the dotted line. Take my pins out. Fold it back. And there's nothing for me to do now because that's the corner, aside from this side. This is our last piece we need to do, and we've done the whole block. Fold, rip out anything that's coming with it. Fold your paper nicely onto your line. Take your 1/4 inch ruler. I'm just trimming up anything that shouldn't be there. Yeah, so I've got a nice 1/4 of an inch hanging over there now. Another bit of material, well the only bit I got is this left, so that's what I'm going to use. Right sides together, making sure it matches, it goes across over the dotted lines, which is 1/4 of an inch either side. So you can, and make sure that when you open it up it is going to work. Alright, pin that into place, and yeah, we're going to go and sew the A9 line. Now, before I put these up on the website, and you go back in my program, make these numbers bigger, because they're quite difficult to see. I'll just go say that. Okay, so I sewed past my dotted line to past my dotted line on the A9 line. That was the last line. Take my pins out. I'm not going to need them anymore. Not going to need them anymore. Fold that back. Okay. Now, before I finally finish, and as you can see, they do go past everything. Before I finally finish, I am going to give that a press because I want a nice accurate cut. I've just pressed that. Still got the paper attached because we need the paper now. And now I need my 6.5 inch square, or or you could use a longer one wherever you've got to hand. But just something with a nice straight ruler now. And now I'm going by the dotted line. Okay, the dotted line, that's all I'm doing. I'm cutting, paper and all, I'm cutting on the dotted line. Yeah. Oh, I got a turning board. What am I doing this for? Yeah, line it up on the dotted line. What have I got there? So, where's my dotted line? It's easier for me to turn this. Right. Dotted line. Ooh, all the way around. It's lovely, isn't it? Dotted line. There is our finished 6 inch square. Well, it's 6 1/4 at the moment, but when it gets sewn in, it'll be a 6 inch square. That's 6 1/2 at the moment. When it gets sewn in everywhere, it will be 6 1/2. Now, what do we do? Well, this is what we do. Sometimes you've got to find a little way in, and obviously you're doing this very gently so to not rip your stitches. Yeah, which is why we've used nice short stitches so that our paper is easy to perforate. As you can see, that bit doesn't want to come out. There's mine. Let me get into this bit somehow. Just get in. Take all our papers off. So yes, you would, depending on how many you want to make of these, you obviously need to print out new papers for each one, because as you can see, there's not a lot left to it when you're finished. So there is the back of the heart. Yep, perfectly done. Front of the heart, perfectly done. And that is foundation paper piecing. Now, I'm going to be doing something with this heart. I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to be using this inside something else, which we're going to be making. So if you do make these, it'd be nice if you could make 2 if you want to carry on with the project that I'm making this for.